Azure Static Web Apps came out of preview.
Yeah, and it's actually it's kind of an awesome thing that when you really think about it. One of the typical challenges that we faced when we talk about deploying applications on a platform, there's some good parts to it. And one of those is that you have to it reduces your overall cost. You don't have to worry about patching servers or making sure that you've got the right assembly version or anything like that goes along with it. So when it starts to build on something like a platform as a service, it's a great capability. And especially now with some of the more modern application development frameworks that are out there, that are JavaScript based, they're client side script. So there are things like Angular, React, Blazor, Vue, some of those that are out there that really, when you hit build, they build effectively a single page with some artifacts on the back end. The interesting thing that comes out of that is I don't need to have a really heavy compute server on the back end. That's in a traditional application architecture. I'm splitting my web app, my API layer from my front end, from that environment. And what we're talking about is taking that front end and putting it on Azure Static Web Apps. It allows you to then build much more modern applications without having to make it feel like you're shoehorning something in. So you get the benefits of leveraging that platform. Cool part about it also is, it's obviously integrated with GitHub and Azure DevOps, so you can build it as a part of your pipeline. And just as you, maybe if it's an Angular framework and you've added a new component or and putting something in there, you want to upgrade your version of Angular, you can write that code, check it into GitHub, hit and as a part of your deployment pipeline, immediately push that to the Azure Static Web Apps. The other side of that, then, that gets even better on all of this, is that because it's a platform as a service, you can run it anywhere. Maybe you want to have regionalized locations, or you have some GDPR concerns and you want to restrict or block out GDPR enabled counties or countries, or make sure that anyone that accesses that data hits the GDPR enabled site. You can do that, and you can do that using, I'd say, like global load balancer level at something like a traffic manager, but it's all dependent upon those Azure Static Web Apps, and it's effectively storage, and it's the thing that you use to build your content delivery network and push it out to wherever you can. So, and then obviously on the back end, there's some really cool things like routing, and you have a seamless security model. You can leverage some of the course configuration capabilities that is built into Microsoft's framework.
Yeah, this always is one of those things that strikes me, is that this is a great example of that scalability when it comes to Azure.
Yeah.
Where you would typically set up a virtual machine to accomplish this, you're kind of restricted to that, and then you might even have to do some sort of migration. But when you are talking serverless, that kind of removes some of that barrier and that maintenance.
Yeah, it's, obviously Stratum is a managed services company, and we do patches. It's kind of any managed services company, if they can't patch your customer environments, they're really not doing their job. The cool part about it is it reduces that burden, it reduces that impact, and allows us to start to play a little bit. Like, do we even have to take an outage when we deploy code? Do we even have to? Can we just fail or flip over to the green site or the blue site? You'll hear a lot of phrases like A/B testing or blue-green deployments. That becomes a very simple and possible way to approach this. You don't have to patch a server, worry about reboots, things like that. So it's really now, I'm going to say, finally taking into consideration all of those really cool frameworks that are very mature. Like I said, React, Vue, if you want to use Next.js or JS, Angular, and Blazor if you prefer .NET. All of those are out there today, and they're pretty mature at this point. And they just need a web server. They need something that can allow me to take this JavaScript code and present it to a browser. let the browser, because they're intelligent. I mean, you have Edge, you have Chrome, you have Firefox, you have all of those that are out there. They all understand that those modern ones, especially, they'll understand that client side scripting. Let's let them do their job, and don't build this massive back end server to serve out web pages like we have in the past.
Yeah, Microsoft themselves do a great job in
Mm-hmm.
demonstrating how some of this works. I mean, there's been in many times that I'll install the universal app of
Mm-hmm.
Outlook, and I prefer using that versus the
Yep.
actual client these days.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're talking to a guy who is a former Microsoft employee that uses a Surface laptop but runs Ubuntu 20.04 LTS Linux on it. My desktop that I'm working on is running Linux. I use the Office suite. We use a lot of different tool sets. And I most of what I do is running in that universal app and that web model, that web environment. Some things I still have to have that, and for that I've thankfully got a WVD. But really simply, like, our business applications have become a traditional, I'm going to say, a three-tier application where you have your presentation tier, your app tier or API tier, and your data tier. And you never have your web servers, your web application front ends talking directly to your data back ends. You've got this abstraction layer in the middle, and that's your API. And so it makes no sense to build heavy duty big servers for that front end when all they're doing is sending files down to that browser. And that's a kind of a cool thing to be able to say. And I will, in complete transparency, two things are true. One, this feature has kind of existed in Azure storage accounts for a while, and it's finally mature. And then the other side of it is they had to do it because AWS has been doing this as well, and it's in S3 buckets for quite a while, and it's a great thing to do because now I want to flip over to my maintenance page and flip back. I can do it. It's just a static page. I don't have to worry about how does this impact the API and all of my application layers and my data tier, and do I have to take my SQL server and fail over? When you start to build it up a level, I can put my images in a CDN, in a content delivery network. When I take my images, put them in that content delivery network, now it doesn't matter where it's at, which is really awesome when you think about it, because now I can take my code, my static web app, I can offload my content separately. I have my API layers split separately. I have my data layers somewhere else. A web application is like 5 megs. It's not that big, maybe 10, 12 megs. I can now deliver everything down. And, if you do a build for prod with Angular, for example, that's the one that I'm most familiar with. You could have a entire dev environment that's 100, 200, 300 megs with all the components. But when you run through a build and put it in prod mode for build, it gets down to like 11 megs, 8 megs. Your index page is under a meg typically. And suddenly now you can deliver that. That allows you to convert that to that much more realistic experience, that modern responsive experience, and maybe whether it be mobile or desktop. You know exactly what you're going to get every time. You don't need to load the images because they're coming from a local location. You don't need to load the app layer or the business logic in it in the API layer because that's been offloaded somewhere else. Don't worry about the data model. Let the APIs handle that. That's what this enables them to do. So it's pretty cool to finally get it as a component.
Yeah, this is always one of those things that's just fascinating because you essentially can write an application in this scenario that works like anywhere on
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. In fact, little bit personal. One of my daughters is starting to learn about how does the cloud work and whatnot. I'm not even starting her with virtual machines or networks or anything like that. It's app platform. It's starting working with that and teaching her what is an app service, what is a function, how does that translate, and then her first project was she created a website running in Azure with Azure Static Apps that did one thing and said hello world. But now
Mhm.
she's done it. Now she's starting to understand that there's more to this than just, games on a mobile device. And as we start to do that, but that was lesson one. All of that other servers and patching and Windows OS stuff, it becomes irrelevant if we can escalate that up a layer or two.
No, that's a great point. There's a lot of people that we'd consider kids. They're not going to know what a virtual machine is eventually. I mean, it's all going to become these type of platforms.
Yeah, it's whether this is running in whether you're deploying a Kubernetes container with application logic, whether you're using Azure Static Apps, or whether you're offloading content to a CDN, you shouldn't have everything bound to a single server or bound to a big farm, because that farm is expensive, and anytime you can get away from that big farm, it allows you to much more, or to tune the environment much more to what you're actually trying to do versus one size fits all for everyone.
So, we could go into a lot more detail regarding this announcement, as well as DevOps and a few other things. So I'd point everybody to head over to stratumtechnology.com and book a call with us if you'd like to chat a little bit more in detail.
Absolutely. Love to talk to you about it.
Thank you for watching Stratum's Cloud Interrupted. If you like what you see, please subscribe, like, and share this video.